بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على نبينا الصادق الأمين محمد بن عبد الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. In the name of God, the Merciful, the Beneficent, all prayer and praise is due to the Prophet Muhammad and his holy household. In chapter 29, verse 56, Surah Al-Ankabut, chapter 29, verse 56, the Quran says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ibadiya alladhina amanu. Inna ardi wasi'atun fa iyaya fa'budun. O my servants who have attained faith, who are believers. Inna ardi wasi'atun. Surely my earth is vast. Therefore worship me and me alone. This is important. Why is it important? Because this is addressing individuals who have been oppressed and suppressed because of their faith in whatever land they're in. First of all, is speaking to the servants. It says, Ya ibadiya alladhina amanu, my servants who have attained faith, belief, because the word servant refers to a believer and a non-believer. The Quran here says, speaking to the servants of Allah who have attained faith, the believers, the mu'mineen. Surely my earth is vast. Therefore it is me whom you should worship. Meaning that if you are not allowed to worship me and me alone wherever you are, then the earth is vast. Go somewhere else. Migrate to another place. Go to a place where you're not being prosecuted based on your migration, based on your religion. In the narration we see from the Prophet sallallahu wasallam, he when speaking to some of his companions, he says that an individual would migrate even if it was the span of a hand. Even if he was to migrate this distance, he has reached a point where he is deserving of the heavens. Of course, بِشَرْطِهَا وَشُرُوطِهَا, as we say in Arabic, it all has there are rules behind it. It's not just simply migrating. So migrating, even if it was a span of a hand, has attained the necessity for Jannah. Then he says, and the companionship of Ibrahim alayhi salam wa Muhammadin salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi wa ala alih, and has attained, or has the right to attain, the neighborhood or the being neighbors with, the companionship of Prophet Ibrahim and our Prophet Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. We read in verse 100 in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 100, the Quran says, he who migrates from his home, he who leaves his home, who migrates in the cause of Allah, will find on earth many places to dwell, and plenty to live by. And whoever leaves his home as a migrant, in the sake of Allah, in the path of Allah and His Messenger, and death overtakes this individual in the path, or during this migration, his reward is then surely upon Allah. And Allah is ever oft forgiving, most merciful. When it comes to migration, we have different types of migration. One type of migration is done out of religious persecution. I want to continue practicing my faith, but I am not allowed to practice my faith. I am being oppressed, being persecuted wherever I am to practice my faith. Therefore, I must migrate, which is the majority of why our fathers ended up in these lands, because they were being religiously persecuted based on their faith, based on their religion, based on their belief system. In fact, most of the people that came to this land whether back in the 1800s and what have you, or whether today. A lot of people that came here due to religious persecution. So this became a safe haven for them. And we see Allah fulfilled His promise where He told them that they will find abundance to live off of. Nonetheless, unfortunately, the crimes that were committed by these migrants and the intolerance is something that is a part of human nature, unfortunately. You know, it's quite heartbreaking to see what you run from, the enemy that you fight, how often people end up encompassing the ideology of that enemy. And it's quite sad, to be honest. It's quite, I don't know how else to explain it. It's quite heartbreaking to see that most of the people that are oppressed, when they get a chance, they end up doing the same thing, which is unfortunate because it's not godlike, it's not prophet-like, it's not wasi-like. Nonetheless, migration, we said one of the ways is due to religious persecution. However, there's other types of migration due to wealth, due to necessity, or out of necessity, out of what have you, for better opportunity. And then there is migration for haram, wal-'iyadhu billah. But that's not our point. Our main focus is the focus of migration in the path of Allah, for the sake of Allah Jalla Jalaluh. We read in Surah An-Nisa, verse 97, chapter 4, verse 97, when the angels take the soul of those who die in sin against themselves, meaning that these individuals who have oppressed themselves, they say, in what plight were you? In what position were you on earth? These individuals reply, we were weak and oppressed when we were on earth. The angels then say to them, was not the earth of Allah spacious and vast enough for you to move yourself away, to move to another place from evil? Such men will find their abode in hell, will find their place in hell. What an evil refuge. This verse says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَ ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ قَالُوا فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ. Where were you? The angels speak to them. قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ. We were oppressed, we were deemed weak on earth. قَالُوا أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً. Was the earth of Allah, was Allah's earth not vast enough? فَتُهَاجِرُوا, for you to migrate to other places? This here speaks to a specific group of individuals that live in a specific area, and they see themselves losing their faith. They see themselves losing their belief system. They see themselves becoming a part of the status quo, fitting in with their surrounding in a negative sense. They see themselves, they might have come here and hijab is required and is obligated upon them. However, through time they see that there's no necessity for it, or they start justifying it for themselves, so they take it off, or they stop praying, or they stop fasting, or they stop presenting Islam. They start fitting in with the culture 100%. And we're not saying don't fit in with the culture. By all means, fit in with the culture, but fit in with the culture by your own terms, to your own terms. Know who you are, know your identity, know what makes you who you are, what makes you an individual, and fit in according to that. Get in where you fit in. Don't try to cut a place for you where you don't belong. Don't try to abandon your heritage and your faith and who you are in order for you to fit in. You'll never fit in that way. You'll never be one of whoever you try to be. You'll always be different. Therefore, honor that difference, know that difference, and fit in according to that difference. So these individuals abandon their faith, abandon their belief system in order to remain in this land, whether for their worldly benefits or what have you. The angels here condemn them. The angels here condemn them, and the angels, then the Quran says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. these individuals will find their abode, will find their final resting place in hellfire. And what an evil refuge. The worst of refuge that could be is hellfire. However, in verse 98, the Quran says, إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ, except for those who were truly weak. إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ حِيلَةً وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ سَبِيلًا. Except for those who are really weak and oppressed, who have no way, from men, women, and children, who have no means in their power, nor a guide to their way. Meaning that these individuals that are accepted are individuals that are truly weak, that truly have no power, no ways of leaving that area. It's not that they try to pretend that they are mustad'afin, that these individuals truly are mustad'afin. The concept of ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah, one of the great sins in Islam. Continuing with the past few days, we spoke about sins and repentance. One of the great sins in Islam is ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah, or reverting back to the ignorant ways after migration, which is one of the great sins. First of all, ta'arrub is a word used to describe the Bedouin Arabs, the nomad Arabs, A'rab. Ta'arrub is going back to the old ways, going back to the ways of ignorance. When that term is used, it doesn't mean that you've become a Bedouin or a nomad where you're living off the land and moving from one place to another. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. However, it's referring to the ignorance that these individuals had, to the lack of civilization that these individuals had. And what I mean by civilization, I mean these individuals were not civilized individuals, not civilization as structures and buildings, as in civilized individuals. Ta'arrub refers to that, to the fact that you are reverting back to the ways of the ignorance, that you are giving up the proper faith, the faith of Islam, the proper methodologies and understanding and ideologies of Islam after your migration. So if you live in a Muslim country, in a Muslim state, there's no problem. You can practice your faith the way that that it is deemed to be practiced, the correct way. However, if you leave to another place, and you might leave to another place, and this place does not impose on you, does not oppress you in your faith, such as our case here. Nobody here tells us not to practice Islam. In fact, we're giving every freedom here to practice our faith. Yes, there are certain things that we have to do within the community, and that's acceptable. We accept that, and we appreciate the fact that we are allowed to do that in these countries. However, if you go to a place that does oppress you religiously, so you live in a neighborhood, let's say in a neighborhood, wherever you are, you live in the neighborhood you live in do not allow you to practice your faith. First and foremost, you cannot impose your faith upon these individuals. It's a free country. I will build a mosque over here whether they like it or not. I'll break their nose and I'll build a mosque over here. We don't have that understanding in Islam. We don't have that concept in Islam. La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in faith. If the people of the town don't want you to build your center here, don't build it there. Why do you feel like you have to force yourself upon these individuals? Find another place to build your temple, your mosque, your whatever, your Husayniyah, even if it's 20 minutes further. Why do you feel that you have to force these individuals to submit to your understanding of faith? Where does that come in? Where do you read in the Quran where you have to force people to accept you? If they want to accept us, by all means, our doors are open. Come, learn from us. Please, we welcome you to come and learn from us. However, if they don't want to come, fine. Lakum dinukum waliya din. To you is your faith and to me is my faith. I don't have to force my faith upon any individual, nor do I want any individual to force their faith upon me. That's number one. Second thing is, say that you live in this community, and this community does not allow you to wear your hijab as a sister. Does not allow you to to be outside in public and look like a Muslim. You're not forced to remain there. Move to another neighborhood that allows you. Remember, we said in the narration, the Prophet says, even if you were to move the span of a hand, the shibr, that's a migration for Allah's sake. Yes, you did not migrate from one country to another, but you moved from one neighborhood to another, because this neighborhood, there are individuals that dislike Muslims, that hate Muslims, and you've tried multiple times to be good to them, to be nice to them, to say, come and learn. What is it that you have against Islam? Let me explain. Speak to a Muslim, ask a Muslim, let me explain. However, these individuals, whether they're extremists, whether they're supremacists, whether what have you, people have multiple ideologies, multiple belief systems. This individual does not want you in their neighborhood and is constantly causing you problems. And due to that, you end up leaving. That is called hijrah. However, if you leave one area to another, so say that you left a Muslim country into a non-Muslim country, and this non-Muslim country caused you to lose your faith, that is called ta'arrub after migration. And that is what is forbidden. Ta'arrub after migration. We see the Quran, and now that's not the only concept of ta'arrub. From the Imam Sadiq salawatullahi wasalamuhu alayhi, he says ta'arrub after migration is he who leaves this path, the path of the way of Ahlul Bayt, after knowing it. That's also considered ta'arrub. And then he says, seek to understand your religion. Salawatullahi wasalamuhu alayhi. He says, seek to understand your religion. For he who does not is as an A'rabi, as an individual who has reverted away from his faith. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah verse 122, فَلَوْلَا نَفَرٌ مِّن كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذْ رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَحْذَرُونَ. And why should not then be a company or a group from every party, from these individuals, among them who would go forth and may apply themselves to obtaining the understanding of their religion, in order that when they would return to their people, they would warn them. When they come back to them, they might be cautious, that they would warn them, they would tell them about Islam from within every group. You live in North America, you live in Australia, you live in London. Send a couple of brothers, a couple of sisters from you to learn their faith, in order for them to teach your community their faith, to teach them your faith, to teach them what is correct and what is incorrect, and not to leave your children up for grabs, up to the wind, up to be convinced and to be taken by any individual who comes by with a few beautiful words, with a few beautiful ways to convince them otherwise. Teach your kids. If you don't know, as a community, come together as a collective, and choose one of your children, one of your sons, one of your daughters. Sponsor that individual. Send him to Najaf, send him to send him to any place to learn that religion, to learn the religion of your fathers and your forefathers, to learn the religion of your Lord, so that these individuals might come back and teach your kids, teach your children. Teach them halal, teach them haram, teach them how to fit into society. Teach them logic, teach them reason and mantiq. Teach them how to fit into society, as opposed to coming 30 years later, 40 years later and say, oh, you know what, my son is not a Muslim anymore. My son fell in with the wrong crowd. My son and my daughter did this and did that. Of course they would. If you did not pay any mind to their spiritual well-being. Alhamdulillah, my fathers and my mothers and my brothers and my sisters care very much for their children and the well-being of their children. The physical one. However, the spiritual one is put as a secondary concept. So we are willing to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for the physical well-being of our children, which is our obligation and our duty, and that's what we should be doing. However, what about the spiritual well-being of your children and their children after them? You see that you do not live in a Muslim community, and that's fine. However, you expect your son to be a perfect Muslim and your daughter to be a perfect Muslim, and for them to observe their hijab and for them to observe their prayer and to observe their siyam, yet you're not willing to teach them properly. You expect them to learn without you teaching them. You expect them to learn without you guiding them. If you end up coming here or going anywhere in the world, by all means, there's no restriction. However, know your faith and know how you can pass your faith on to your children. And that is extremely important. Because that way you ensure the survival of the spirituality of your child. Nonetheless, as we said, تعرب بعد الهجرة is considered a major sin. Al-Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi narrates, major sins in Islam are 7. The killing of a believer on purpose. Now, that doesn't mean that the killing of a non-believer is okay. No, it is also a major sin. However, in this specific quote, it says the believer. But we can say the killing, al-nafs al-muhtarama, the respected individual. Accusing a married woman of infidelity. Fleeing from battle. Ta'arrub after migration, reverting back after migration. Taking the wealth of an orphan by oppression. Taking interest after knowing that it is forbidden or that it is interest. And everything that Allah has made necessary as a punishment for that act withheld. So the Imam is telling you that one of the greatest sins you can commit is to revert away from your religion after your migration. In a narration, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi, and this is the narration that we refer to, he says, he who flees for his religion from one land to another, even if it were the span of a hand, has deserved paradise and is a companion of Ibrahim and Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim. We see the Muslims when they were being prosecuted, when they were being attacked in Mecca, and the Muslims ended up migrating. There were certain Muslims that could not migrate due to illness and due to other reasons. The narration says that when the verse of hijrah came, of migration came, and it reached Mecca, one of the individuals who was in Mecca, one of the Muslims, a man by the name of Jundu ibn Dumra, This man was extremely ill. However, when he heard this, he said to his sons, I would not be one of those that are exempt. Why? Because the Quran says, إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ. The exemption is those who are mustad'afin, who are deemed weak, who are weak. He says, I will not be one of those who is exempt. I find myself strong enough to travel, and I know the way over to Medina, to Yathrib. So apparently his sons tried to convince him otherwise. He says, no, I will not sleep here tonight, even if you have to carry me on your backs. I will not sleep in Mecca tonight. I will go to Medina. They say that he went on their way to Mecca. On his way, they reached a specific place where death came to him, where he was on death's door, where he was dying. They say he took his hand and he put it in the other hand like so, as if he was shaking hands. And he says, this is for my Lord and for my Prophet. O my Lord, I vow to everything that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi vowed. And he passed away. They say that the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi started saying, had he only made it to Medina, he would have received the reward of hijrah, of migration. They say that that's when the verse was revealed, telling them the Quran reads, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and whoever migrates in the way of Allah, he will find on earth many places of refuge, the verse that we read, and abundant resources. And whoever leaves his home, migrates from his home to Allah and His Messenger, and then death overtakes him, or dies on the way, his reward is indeed with Allah, and Allah is forgiving, merciful, is oft forgiving, merciful. So this came telling them, don't worry about him. Don't think that Allah would not reward him. Allah is all merciful. Allah loves to reward His servants. This individual died on the path of his Creator, of his Lord. Brothers and sisters, seeing is that we live in a non-Muslim land. In fact, even if you live in a Muslim land, the most important thing to have is your identity, is knowing who you are as an individual. Who am I as Khalid? What can I do? What can't I do? How important is it that specific individuals accept me? And how important is it that Allah accepts me? And I want to say something here for the record. What you are falling into, of certain individuals, of peer pressure, certain individuals accepting you or not, know that in the scope of your life, these individuals are irrelevant and minute. These specific individuals. Some individual would come to you and mock you and disrespect you because you don't drink alcohol. Know that they are irrelevant to your existence and to your life. Rather, we see the individuals who respect themselves, who have attained peace within their heart, within their minds, within their Lord, or between them and their Lord. Good people will accept you for who you are. Whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're a Sikh, regardless of what faith you are. A good individual will accept the individual in front of him based on the fact that this is an individual, a human being standing in front of him. And this is what our Imams teach us. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to Malik al-Ashtar, people are either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity. At the end of the day, they're both the same. They're both one and the same. You treat them one and the same. And we said the Quran specifically says, we have made you into nations and tribes so that you get to know each other. Benefit from knowing each other. Know that that not everything within you and within your tribe and within your culture is good. And the person that stands in front of you, not everything within them is good or bad. There is good and bad in you, and there is good and bad in them. Therefore, learn your identity. Understand who you are as a Muslim. Understand what Islam is. So that you can point out the good from the bad. And you can take the good and abandon the bad. Stop trying to fit in. Stop trying to look like someone else. Stop trying to fit into what others view as being uncool and being what have you. Know your identity as an individual. Who are you as an individual? That way, you know what to choose, what fits your identity and what doesn't. That way that you don't have that izdiwajiyya or that two-face or that being torn apart between two cultures. The fact of the matter is we need to benefit from being in the Western culture, from understanding the good in the Western culture, from inheriting the good from the Western culture, and from bringing and inheriting the good in our cultures as well. As opposed to trying to abandon and leave and trying to fit in to ideas that benefit you not and that are irrelevant in the large scope of things. والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.